Hi everyone, this is an additional video here specifically referencing your final projects and final project expectations. To find where the document is for your final project expectations, you can go to Files and go over to the folder that's called Final Project. You'll click on that, and in there you'll see this PDF that is called Guidelines for Projects. When you click on that, you'll see this document that kind of outlines what the general expectations are and what the criteria are that you need to meet. So there are two main criteria. One is that your project needs to use quantitative information to answer, or at least attempt to answer, some defined research question, and there needs to be a component of analysis that is explicitly spatial. So, because this is a geographic information systems course, we want to make sure that you're doing something that actually requires the use of ArcGIS Pro and not something that could be done in R or Excel by itself. So when you prepare your project, make sure that you briefly describe what the idea is, or at least something that you've developed so far. The project that is developed somewhat means that you have a clear question that you plan to address, you know your key sources of data, and you have a general idea of the analytical approach you'll use. This is the first step when you are thinking about what you want to do for your final project. Once you have some sort of an idea, is looking for if the data is there and then how you can actually analyze that data. If you are enrolled in the 30/20 section, you have to work in a group of 4. Now, if it is an odd numbered class, we may have a group of 5, we may have one group of 3, but please do not operate under the assumption that a group of 3 or 5 will work. That's going to be 1 oddity, 2 oddities max. If you're enrolled in the 50/20 section, it is independent work. So basically, if you are enrolled in the graduate section of this course, you have to do this project independently. I would suggest starting with a few slides or a few bullet points on a slide, introducing your topic, and then generally why you find it important or interesting. Make sure that per any research project that you do, you state the research question or the hypothesis clearly, and you are allowed to have multiple questions. Describe the approach to answering your question. Making your maps is important, but you also have to have that quantitative piece. So it doesn't mean that you need to have some sort of profound statistics, although you do have tools for background and stats are very good. You do, though, need to have something that produces some numbers or some sort of numerical analysis that provides conclusions or supports the interpretation of your maps. I highly suggest that you have a flowchart of some sort that shows the GIS practice. This has been reviewed in some of your lectures, so let us know, using a flowchart, the layers and tools used, what those intermediary layers are, what the alterations were to those layers and attribute tables and such for each of the maps you create. Please do not exceed more than 5 maps maximum for each project. At minimum, you need to have 1 map. Make sure you're stating what kind of information your project will produce, and if it's possible, what you expect the results to be. Make sure that at the end of your slides, you list the datasets that you use in the sources, so make sure you cite your sources. Layers that are used as base maps or to provide spatial context do not apply in this case. Your project presentations will be capped at 15 minutes. Typically, we allow about 3 minutes for questioning, but since again, this is an asynchronous course, let's cap these at 15 minutes maximum. Your presentation should be in the form of slides, whether it's on PowerPoint, Google Slides, etc., and you need to have a recording of you and your group actually presenting these slides. The best projects are those that present the topic and hypothesis very clearly. They provide a thorough, logical workflow. They have thoughtful and aesthetic maps and provide a clear expectation for what the results of the analysis are, as well as the explanation of why you got what you did or why you think you got what you did. In this document, you have some very useful links for where to look for data. You do not only need to utilize these suggestions. You're not expected to purchase data, and this is a very big thing. Please do not purchase data for this. You're free, you're welcome and free to reach out to certain students, professors, people that you know that have data to see if they'll share it with you for free. You can let them know that you're doing it for a course project, but please do not go behind a paywall to access data. There's a lot of free stuff out there, and in the case that you still cannot find the data that you want, you may have to tweak your research questions slightly based on what is available. This is your final project rubric. Remember that this is a general rubric. It's not going to be exact, but it is a very good representation of how we will be grading your final projects and how your peers will also be doing their peer review of your projects. So, of course, completion is a big chunk of this. The intellectual merit, quality of content and methodology, use of GIS, the quality of the presentation, and then the feedback all factor into the grade that you'll receive. A note that I'd like to make: please make sure that when you are making these presentations, you're not being too excessive with the amount of words on the slides, with the amount of any unnecessary context that's on those slides. Really, what the main goal of this is to showcase your understanding and your ability to use GIS. So keeping those things in mind, good luck for your guidelines for final projects. This exists again in files under final project folder, guidelines for projects. Any questions that you may have, feel free to post these in Piazza in the appropriate folder, and we'll get back to you.